Okay, welcome to part 1 of continuity editing. This is just a short lecture that's going to walk you through the ideas behind continuity editing. So, editing in general, right? Once you've taken all your shots, you've got all your angles and everything, right? That part where you put it into Final Cut and you put it all together and you slice it all up, that's editing. Now, when it comes to actually making a story, right, so far we've done things that are more abstract. We've done the My World project, which was just a bunch of different things, and then the Motif project, which was kind of like a more thematic thing. So we haven't done something where you're actually really trying to make a story. And that's where editing comes in play in better detail. So in this case, editing is choosing the arrangements of your shots so that they make sense to the viewer. So how you order your shots, right, changes the interpretation that the viewer is going to have. When you make your editing choices, with any editing actually, you're establishing both the structure, that's the way the story is told. You're establishing the content, that's the meaning of the story. You're establishing the mood or the feeling of the story, and you're establishing the tempo or the pace of the story. So all of these things are actually done with the different editing choices that you make. Right now, we're really just going to be looking at structure and a little bit of content when we talk about continuity editing. So continuity editing specifically is the arrangement of a sequence of shots to suggest a progression of events. So it's how you arrange your shots. The order that you choose to arrange them in suggests something happening, suggests some kind of order of what's going to happen. So if you are not yet taking notes on the Continuity Notes Google Doc, you probably should be doing that right now because this is the first question: what is continuity editing? So go ahead and pause and take those notes if you're not doing it right now. So the idea behind this, right, as we worked out in the activity, is that with the same shots, the editor can actually suggest many different scenarios. You can actually take the exact same set of shots and make different meaning out of them depending on the order that you put your shots in. So let's look at a really simple example first. Alright, so we have two things that happen. One, a gun is fired, and then a man looks up in surprise. So first we see a gun being fired, then we see a man looking up in surprise. What do we assume has happened? Logically, we assume that a gun was fired, this man heard it, and he looked up and was surprised when he heard it. That's what makes sense. But what if we switch it around? In this case, what if the man looks up in surprise and then a gun is fired? Well, we're going to assume that he was shot by the gun, right? He looks up in surprise at the person who's holding the gun right there, and then the gun is fired. So when we switch between these two, right, the gun first and then the man, or the man first and then the gun, the whole meaning changes, right? I mean, it really changes. Whether or not this guy got shot changes depending on which way we put these two different little clips. So let's look at another one. You've got people jumping from a car, you've got a car on fire, and you have a big explosion. Good? So if we had them in this order, we'd have people jumping from a car, right? And clearly it's because for some reason they knew it was going to be on fire, because then it was on fire and then it blew up. But what if we did it this way? A big explosion, a car on fire, and then people jumping from the car. Well, in that way, we would assume that the explosion caused the car to be on fire, and then people were jumping from it because because it was on fire. Or what if it was on fire, and then there was a big explosion, and then people were jumping from a car? In that case, we might assume that the car on fire caused the explosion, and then people were jumping from a different car, right? Because clearly that car is not blown up, that was maybe going to be on fire or was affected by the explosion somehow. And another way, if the car is on fire, people jump from it, and then there's a big explosion, right? It's assumed that the car was on fire, that's why they were jumping from the car, and now there's a big explosion from it. So each of these different ways has a different meaning, shows you a different way that that you can interpret what's going on. And so each time you put things in a certain order, we make an assumption about what's going on based on the order that you put your shots in. So the editor, generally speaking, has a lot of control over the actual overall ending message of the production. And that's all we're going to cover right here. Go ahead, stay tuned or hop into the next video here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about continuity editing and some of the different aspects of that.